Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. During the January 8th COVID-19 press conference, Bloomington Mayor John Hamilton reported COVID-19 vaccinations were received by approximately 3% of the county population, but that a quicker vaccination rate would be needed.
If we want to get by summer to significant community protection and community vaccinations, it's going to take 3 or 4 times that pace locally, which will depend upon 2 things. One, getting more vaccination dosages delivered, and that's mostly out of our control in terms of the national and state distributions. But that's key, is to get more doses into our community.
Hamilton encouraged all residents to get the vaccination when it becomes available to them. County Health Administrator Penny Cottle specified vaccination appointments can be made online or by calling 211.
So if you go online, if you it's ourshot.in.gov, and there's a map of the vaccination clinics, and so you can scroll down to Monroe County, for example, and you will see IU Health Bloomington, and you'll see the health department has a vaccine clinic. Our vaccine clinic is actually going to start at the convention center, and we want to give a big shout out and thank you to the convention center for providing that space for us. That is a very big gift to us, and we're very appreciative of that. So you will, when you schedule the appointment or you go in, you could schedule with IU Health as they're continuing to vaccinate individuals. You could come to the convention center, and that's where we will be for the foreseeable future.
Cottle reported 400 to 600 vaccinations are expected each week. She mentioned the vaccination is free. However, Indiana University Health can still bill insurance companies. IU Health Hospital South Central Region President Brian Shockney said there are no walk-in vaccination appointments.
Since adding the approved Moderna vaccine to our site beginning last week, like the Pfizer vaccine, we have seen very minimal side effects. The most common effect is a sore arm, similar that you get when you get other vaccines. And so this week we began to administer those second doses. And as people register and get their first dose, we automatically register them for their second dose, so they don't leave until they've been registered for that second dose to be sure that they get the full effect of the vaccine. And it's also important to note that if you get the Moderna vaccine, you will get the Moderna vaccine on your second round. And if you get the Pfizer vaccine, you will get the Pfizer vaccine on your second dose.
Indiana University Assistant Vice President Kirk White stated the IU Bloomington campus was enrolled as a vaccination site and is awaiting state approval. Cottle said the Morton Street COVID-19 testing site now offers rapid testing and encouraged any community member experiencing COVID-19 symptoms to get tested. The Bloomington Utilities Service Board Finance Subcommittee met to discuss the 2021 water rate case. Utilities Director Vic Kelson spoke about the commercial rates during their January 11th meeting.
The question last time was, where would we stand in comparison to other communities? Right now, we're in the lowest 1/4. After phase 1, we would be right at the bottom of the lowest, right at the bottom of the middle third. And after the second phase, we would be still below half and in the middle third. And 2 of the cities that are above us right now are also doing rate cases right now. So essentially we'll end up basically where we are now.
Kelson clarified that residential customers would see a maximum increase of about $3.74 per month. Board members will vote on the water rate at their next Finance Subcommittee meeting held on January 19th. The Ellettsville Town Council discussed the town's COVID-19 personnel policy response during their January 11th meeting. Attorney Darla Brown spoke about employee travel restrictions.
At the previous council meeting, the council had asked to redact the portions of the policy that put limitations on the employee's ability to travel. So I changed that, and specifically I redacted former paragraph 2.5, and also in section 4, I redacted section 4.4. Section 4.3, I changed to say that any additional approval for paid sick leave shall be at the discretion of instead of the town council, it now reads the town employee's department head and the town manager.
Brown stated that any approved sick leave would be in addition to what was required in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. She mentioned the policy would end when the public health emergency is revoked by Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb. Council members approved the policy, retroactive to January 1st, 2021. During the January 11th Bloomington Plan Commission meeting, zoning planner Eric Grulich presented a rezone request for 87 acres at 3100 West Fullerton Pike from planned unit development to mixed-use corridor. He said the difference in zone uses were too broad.
The reason that we are still recommending denial is the list of uses, the difference between these two districts is still very broad. While the list of uses that the petitioner is proposing to exclude, would take away some undesirable uses. The general problem that we have, or the concern that we have, is the other uses that are still allowed. These smaller uses make the property more likely to be developed with a lot of small little retail uses than a large employment generating type of use.
Grulich said the petitioned rezone would not complement the comprehensive plan. He stated typical mixed-use corridor zoned developments would not be suitable for the site.
This property is very unique in its location, immediately adjacent to the interstate, that it's got a direct access point and exit, which makes it a great location for a regional employment use or other uses that serve the region. This particular area is not easy to get to by members within the community. So these smaller retail uses, smaller uses within the mixed use corridor really just are not appropriate here given the lack of easy access here.
Petitioner Representative Michael Carmen argued that most PUD developments are allowed in MC zones and that the property costs would not allow for small developments.
There is no small retail use that's going to go in out there that's going to pay for a $2.6 million road. It's just not going to happen. It's just not feasible. It's going to take a significant major development of anything to generate enough money that warrants spending $2.6 million on a road. It's not going to be paid by a small restaurant or a couple small retail uses. It's going to take something much more significant. So if you look at the table of uses that Eric included in the staff report, the comparison, the MC uses and the ME uses, I'm glad he did that, because look at those. If you start with the ME use, go down the list and find a use that's permitted ME, and then move to the left and you have the column for the MC uses. And what do you find? Almost everything identified in the ME column is also identified in the MC column.
Grulich said not many properties are available in Bloomington for large employment businesses. Commissioner Karen St. John said zone purposes are very similar and the zone rules were unclear. The Plan Commission forwarded the petition to City Council with no recommendation. The Bloomington Commission on Sustainability discussed a resolution on Housing First during their January 12th meeting. Commissioner Najla Routsong described the Housing First concept.
The idea is basically that you can have a home with no conditions if you need that, unless you violate the lease. No one's going to give you an apartment and let you violate the lease, okay? And that's why any comprehensive so a housing first approach is a philosophy. And so normally a housing first program would have a variety of options to people, right? Because people have different needs. Some people just need help the rapid rehousing like we have here. Some people need, just temporary help paying the rent for a couple months, and then they just send them the money, right? Other people may need help finding an apartment. And then other people may need permanent supportive housing.
Routsong said the resolution would provide homes to people regardless of substance use disorder or disability. She mentioned the program began in Europe and has come into the United States.
There's successful programs in Portland, Oregon, Los Angeles, California, Denver, Colorado, Quincy, Massachusetts, New York City, New York, and Portland, Maine.
Routsong reported the program has been proven successful. Commissioner Joseph Newkman stated the Housing First program would be more affordable than operating multiple shelters. Routsong quoted the average program costs.
One study found an average cost savings on emergency services of $31,000 per person housed in a Housing First program over 2 years. Another study showed a Housing First program could cost $23,000 less per person per year than a shelter program.
Commissioner Matt Flaherty mentioned Indiana landlords can discriminate against tenants based on their income source. He reported the discrimination cannot be prohibited through local law. The commissioners agreed to present the resolution to City Council at a future meeting. Monroe County Council approved a preliminary tax abatement for Tassus. The North Curry Pike property in Bloomington was preliminarily declared an economic revitalization area during their January 12th meeting. Attorney Jeff Cockerell spoke about the abatement request.
This is a personal property tax abatement request, so there's no building or any kind of real estate component to it. They are going to bring a little over $900,000 worth of equipment and put it in our west side area. The process is converting, which I would defer to the company, but to me it's making the stickers and decals that you see on a lot of the automotive parts.
Cockerell clarified the declaration of an economic revitalization area would require a second hearing. He mentioned that the tax increment finance district would not be affected.
When that TIF was established, only one property captured personal property on it, and that was the GE plant. That GE plant is no longer part of that TIF, but none of the other personal property is captured by that TIF district. It's the same as if it were anywhere else in essentially the Richland Township taxing district that has the same configuration as the TIF district. So it does not capture any personal property flows as it would have if the TIF district had never been created.
Councilmember Trent Deckard mentioned the abatement would last 5 years. Director of Tassus Amy Ketchum spoke about the business plan.
We are looking to invest just shy of $1 million in equipment in a different type of manufacturing than what we do in our plant where we are doing injection molding. So this is, as Jeff mentioned, it's called converting and roll label. Converting can be, as he said, labels, warning labels that you might see inside of your vehicle, but it's also foams and different materials that might be used for noise reduction. So it allows us a competitive advantage in a little bit different space in the automotive industries.
Ketchum stated all 8 new employees would participate in specialized training. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to CATSweek. The Bloomington City Council Land Use Committee considered a 7-acre rezone from residential medium lot to employment on West Fountain Drive. Planner Eric Grulich said Comcast requested the rezone to expand their building space during their January 13th meeting.
The property has a lot of surrounding land uses that vary. Along Fountain Drive, you've got a lot of industrial uses. Across the street, you have Westside Auto Parts, JB Salvage. To the north of this, you have an industrial workshop and a church. To the east, you have a couple single-family residences. And then south of the railroad tracks on Fountain, you have single-family residences. As I mentioned, Comcast has operated on this site for a long time. They've done several expansions to the property over those years.
Grulich said Comcast had previously been granted multiple use variances for expansion on the property. He mentioned use variances are no longer an option under the new Unified Development Ordinance. Grulich said the new expansion would not expand the developed area.
So the petitioners would be constructing the new building in the location of an existing building. So the overall footprint on the site would not be expanding. As I mentioned, the site is surrounded by various mature canopy trees and the sinkhole. So these would be set aside in the required easements. There is right-of-way that would need to be dedicated along Fountain Drive that would be required to be dedicated with this petition as well. But overall, the site plan itself is not really expanding in terms of its footprint.
Councilmember Kate Rosenbarger clarified that the petitioner would contribute to the installation of sidewalk along Fountain Drive. Grulich mentioned the rezone would require alternate transportation property compliance.
But the rezoning would require the property to come into compliance with any of our alternative transportation section requirements. So because there is a multi-use path that is called out for along this property, that is what necessitates the removal of the sidewalk and the installation of that. So the petitioners would be making a contribution equal to what the cost is for that multi-use construction along this property frontage.
Council members unanimously recommended do pass to the City Council. Bloomington Housing Authority Director Amber Scobie presented the second phase inducement resolution for Crestmont to the Bloomington Economic Development Commission. The resolution would issue revenue bonds for financing economic development facilities. Scobie spoke of the location during their January 13th meeting.
If you're unfamiliar, Crestmont is south of 15th Street. It is east of Lindbergh, north of 12th Street, and west of Monroe. So that's the current public housing community and the boundaries of Crestmont. So on the northwest side of Bloomington, really close to Tri-North Middle School and the Ferguson Crestmont Boys and Girls Club.
Scobie said that Crestmont contains 196 apartment units. She mentioned the inducement would not affect ownership of Crestmont.
We plan to still, be in the ownership structure within our nonprofit entity and continue to be the property management entity as well. So in a lot of ways for our residents, it will feel like the same people that they're interacting with, but at the end of the day, we'll be renovating all the units. And so the quality of life and the condition of their units will be greatly improved.
Scobie mentioned the subsidy could be moved from Section 9 into Section 8 of the Public Housing Choice Voucher Subsidy, and that more funding would be available within Section 8.
RAD is just a tool that you can move your Section 9 public housing subsidy to the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Subsidy, which is much more stable. It has much more support for funding in Congress. And it's much more predictable for us so that we can maintain these units and make sure we have the funding that we need to keep providing quality housing.
Scobie said that renovations would bring units up to code requirements such as handicap accessibility, structural repair, unit modernization, and energy efficiency. She stated resident relocation during renovation would be paid for by Bloomington Housing Authority. The commissioners unanimously approved the resolution. The Monroe County Commissioners approved Services Training Officers and Prosecutors, or STOP, grant funding during their January 13th meeting. Prosecutor Beth Hamlin spoke about the grant usage.
This STOP grant funds approximately 50% of the salary and most of the benefits for our sex crime deputy prosecutor and our domestic violence deputy prosecutor, as well as a part-time assistant position. Those coupled with the victim assistants that are funded through a different grant make up our newly formed, well, within the last 2 years, special victims unit, which is really taking off and binding together, and I'm really pleased with the success we've had.
Hamlin stated the grant would cover dates from January 2020 to September 2021. Commissioner Lee Jones reported the grant amount is approximately $100,000. Bloomington City Council took a vote on the consolidation of council standing committees. Councilmember Steve Volan presented the resolution during their January 13th meeting.
We have 11 committees now: Administration, Climate Action and Resilience, Community Affairs, Jack Hopkins Social Services Funding, Housing, Land Use, Public Safety, Sidewalk Funding, Sustainable Development, Transportation, and Utilities and Sanitation.
Council members amended the resolution to allow the Transportation Committee to take the responsibility of the Sidewalk Committee. Councilmember Sue Scambaluri proposed an amendment to maintain the Climate Action and Resilience Committee.
Climate action is an issue that cuts across every single department in the city, not just one, not just economic and sustainable development. And I think there is value in a standalone committee that can play that boundary spanning role, that can be a resource to a lot of different departments, to be a resource to every other committee as needed.
Scambaluri worried that without the Climate Action Committee, climate issues would be lost within other committees. Council members unanimously adopted the amendment. Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith proposed an amendment to preserve the Housing Committee.
I feel strongly that it should continue to exist and work on some legislation for this year, and also be a venue for discussing homelessness and housing situation here in Bloomington.
Piedmont Smith mentioned the Land Use Committee already has a large amount of work, and housing issues could get overlooked if combined. Council members approved the proposed amendment and the resolution as a whole. The Bloomington City Council Public Safety Committee held a discussion on the unhoused population in Bloomington during their January 14th meeting. Community member Tassie Gennady spoke about Wheeler Mission.
2 nights ago, we've been watching the park for activity at night, and there was a gentleman, and he was sitting on the bench at the bus stop, and he had a blanket over him, and that was just where he was. And so we went over to check on him, and we managed to get him into a tent, and Wheeler came to pick people up, and I said, "Would you like to go to shelter? It'll be so much warmer." And he said, "Where would I go?" And I said, "Wheeler is here to pick you up." He said, "No." And then I can't say what he actually said right after that. And I said, "Look, but it would be, I understand you're in this tent and it's slightly better than sitting on a bench, but we didn't have a heater there for him." But he just wouldn't, it wasn't something he would entertain. And I know that Wheeler doesn't necessarily mean to put people off, but that's the fact of the matter, that some of these people would rather sit on a bench in the middle of the night under a blanket than go there.
Bloomington Homeless Coalition member Mark Teller stated Seminary Park residents have chosen to stay in the park. He said the location provides comfort.
That's where they feel comfortable. That's right next to all of their amenities that they can get, the food, the day shelter, the showers. Short of that, they would have to walk miles to just get warm clothes, possibly walking through situations to get hot food.
Resident Timothy Clark said the city's homeless evictions do not keep the community safe. Community member Tyler Berkebile mentioned his experience with Wheeler Mission.
I went to Wheeler. It was really unsanitary in there. They had like a plastic tarp that separated the beds, and people had cut holes in that. You know, people were coughing, people were not wearing their masks, not social distancing, and I had my face covered with my mask even while I was laying down, had my hat pulled over my face, and the blanket I had over my mouth, and also the inner of my elbow over my mouth too, because I didn't feel comfortable breathing.
Homeless Coalition member Heather Lake explained her involvement bringing residents of the encampment warm drinks in the morning. She expressed concern for the residents' safety.
I don't know where some of my friends are, and these people are my friends. They call me the coffee lady. We give hugs when we see each other. I know things about them. I know, that one man, he makes up the most beautiful songs just off the top of his head, and he'll sing them to me. I know another man who we've had wonderful conversations. The first time that I met him, he was outside shivering in the cold, and he wouldn't take a jacket. And I said, "Oh, I'm a grandma, okay? You need to listen to a grandma and put on your jacket." And so he did. And from then on, he's been calling me grandma. And I haven't seen him lately. And I don't know where he is. And I don't know if he's okay.
Resident Kay Goodman stated the homeless population is in crisis. Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith mentioned a meeting would be held on January 25th to discuss long-term homelessness solutions. And that is all for Cats Week. Thank you for joining us. For Cats and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.